members area, or if you're not viewing this on the members area, welcome to this video anyways. And today we are going to talk about using a KnotOut to get the muscles that you don't normally think about in your hips. So when we think of our hips, we think of, we know of a few muscles that are the main muscles in our hips, and that's typically our glutes, the hamstrings, the hip flexors, so the fronts, the backs, and your butt. But we don't always think about the other muscles that are around your hips, and we don't recognize the significance of these other smaller, lesser known, but equally important muscles. So the muscle I want to talk about today is your tensor fascia latae. So your latae muscle. It's not your latae muscle. Tensor fascia latae. And this is a muscle that's part of your external hip rotator group. So it's part of your butt, basically. And it's right here, on the side of your hip. Right in here. I'm kind of poking it right now. Right above the side of your hip to the outside of your glute. And it's an external hip rotator. And when this muscle gets tight, a few things happen. It can cause irritation in your hip when you walk. It can cause pain in your hip if it's really tight. It can pull on your IT band, which connects your hip to your knee, and that can cause knee instability. And it can also contribute to quicking in your knee by that tightness in the IT band. So you can have quicking in your knee, which is uncomfortable, which is your tendon going over a bone, not a good thing. So that's tight and that's painful. And we forget about that a lot because we think mostly about stretching our hip flexors, stretching our glutes, stretching our hamstrings. But again, not these muscles on the side, which are very thick muscles. If you look at them on a chart, or look at them on a chart body diagram thing, you'll see that they're rather small in terms of space that they come up from the front, but they're actually very thick muscles. So we're going to get into it with a KnotOut today. So I want to show you how to do that. So the KnotOut, if you're not familiar with the KnotOut yet, this is my go-to mobility tool for anything relating to self-myofascial release, addressing muscle restriction, so muscle that's unable to be used because it's trapped, it's locked, or it's in a knot. So this is a huge help to anybody for a range of motion. So we're going to do this by just kind of laying on the side here. Right, so the KnotOut's under me, and I'm going to find that spot, oh god, right to the side, right above my hip, not quite on my butt, but to the side. And I'm just going to kind of sit there and like move around a little bit, try and find that spot, kind of work back and forth. Oh dear God. And if you found a spot where it's really tender, you're in the right spot. Now avoid the bone. Nobody likes going over their bone with a mobility tool. So avoid the bone, and you're just going to move very slowly back and forth. Maybe not at all. And you can kind of roll from side to side as well if you want to try touching that muscle in a different way, or again you can kind of roll up and down. But we're just going to do our best to kind of mash out this tight muscle. And again, once we address this, this will help with glute strength. It'll help with knee strength, with knee stability. And if you have, sometimes you can have hip pain just because this muscle is really tight. It can send shooting pains down your hip. Especially if you've been lifting and you're really sore the day afterwards, or if you tend to favor one leg, then this can get a little bit more tender on the strong side as opposed to that weak side, because it has to make up for what the weaker leg is not doing. So it can also be caused by balances. So again, I'm just going to kind of roll on this guy. Jeez, this is tight. And see what I can do here to break up that tissue, break up that muscle, and get it moving again. Alright, that's enough. So you can spend about 5 minutes per side. I'm going to switch sides just for the sake of brevity, because you don't need to see me doing the same thing for 5 minutes. then I'm going to go to the other side, just starting to roll, kind of turning to the side maybe figuring out where exactly this is, right? Because it's going to be different for everybody. Certain parts of the muscle are going to be really tight, maybe for you, where they're not as tight for other people. So you're going to have to play around with this, kind of roll from side to side, move up and down, maybe just rest on top of it, and just tiny bit of wiggling back and forth. Figure out what works for you. Oh God. So I found a really good spot right there, so I'm just going to sit on it now that I've found it. And when you find that spot, when you find that trigger point, if you apply enough pressure to it, if you relax into it, that trigger point will release, and that's going to cause relief through the whole muscle. Imagine it as, you know, a button to deactivate a, that's a horrible example. I was going to say a button that deactivates the self-destruct thing. So just think of it as a button that releases that trap muscle. Let's just go with that trigger point. And I'm going to just, again, kind of roll up and down on this, maybe move from side to side. And this is, again, targeting your tensor fascia latae, part of your external hip rotator group. Works with your glutes, helps to keep your knees healthy, helps to engage your glutes in squats and airplane and other poses. All right. And I'm going to come off of that now. Alright, so we've done both sides, we've worked into the hips, now it's time to stretch them a little more. And one of my favorite exercises for doing this is a figure four with some mobility work to it. So this is what that looks like. Alright, I have to turn the camera up a little bit for you. So this is what that figure four balance looks like. So use something to help stabilize. You're going to cross your right ankle on top of the left ankle. Let's start off there. I'm going to sit down, but I'm going to keep my chest upright like this, and I'm just going to kind of move back and forth like this, and that's going to target, so in this case I'm targeting my right leg, the leg that's on top, and that's going to target that area that I just did a bunch of work on, a bunch of mobility work on. And I'm using something to balance because the focus here is not on the balance, but it's on stretching that muscle that you just released, okay? So that muscle that you just got to, that muscle tissue that you just broke up. So now we're kind of molding it, we're stretching it, we're getting it long, getting it functional again. You can do this for about a minute and then make sure that you switch sides. So now we're getting the left side. Again, this is targeting the external hip rotators, your tensor fascia latae, your glutes. And again, I'm going to try and keep my chest upright here, so I'm not going to go down like, I'm not going to fold down and around my back, but I'm going to keep my chest lifted, lightly applying pressure by pressing the knee down, the left knee down, keeping the weight in my glutes, just so I have good form here. And then just kind of turning from side to side to work into that tightness. All right, and then after I finish that, I want to go through some movements that strengthen the glutes. So really good move after this would be an airplane, right? So 20 the toes back, externally rotating the hips so your hip is facing out to the side, pushing your head forward, maybe using something to help you balance, or just doing it as a balancing exercise, depending on. But I recommend using a balance, something to help you balance, just so you can make sure that you are squaring the hips properly. And then let's do the opposite side. So now the right leg, and by square the hips, I mean turn your hip out to the side, turn your opposite hip down, the hip that's lifted. And you should feel some stretching in the glute, also activation in the glute, pulling the chest forward so you're getting some core engagement here. And again, working into your glute, working into your hamstrings. All right, and then we're going to do some squats because that's what's going to really engage the glutes. So, toes facing almost straight forward, tailbone reaching down, squatting down, getting your butt back, keeping that slight arch to your back. So, making sure that you're not getting what's called a butt link, making sure that you're not doing this, but keeping your back slightly arched, okay? And then using your glutes to power back up, pressing the hips forward. So you can do a few of those. At the end, make sure that your glutes get active again. All right, so there's a little bit of mobility stuff that you can do working on your TFL. which again is this muscle that's important, part of your external hip rotators, but a lot of the time neglected just because it's not a well-known or major muscle. So 25% off with the code ManFlowYoga. I use that thing every day or every other day. Other than my yoga mat, it's my favorite tool. So mobility is something that you need for yoga or for any form of physical fitness, and stretching is one way to get mobility. The next step is using a mobility tool, and that can up your flexibility tremendously. So if you want to learn more about self-myofascial release or about KnotOut, I'll leave a link in the description below with a blog about KnotOuts and about mobility. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.